Hello, this is Miss Schrader. Today we're going to be talking about the painting that you can see right here. It's a very famous painting, obviously, of George Washington. My students, you're going to need a piece of paper and something to write with so you can take notes. When you're done, I want between 7 and 10 sentences about the significance of the painting that we're looking at. All right, let's get started. All right, let's take a look at the painting again. This painting is by Gilbert Stuart. He was a very famous portraitist of the time period. He was born in 1755 and died in 1828. And he got to do paintings of a lot of the significant people of the time period. The paintings that made him the most money, however, were the paintings that he did of George Washington. And it was common in those days that you would make lots and lots of copies of paintings, and then you would sell the various different copies. This painting has a lot of different copies done by Gilbert Stuart himself and given out to various different places. And here we have a painting of Gilbert Stuart himself, done by his daughter Jane Stuart in his later years. Now, Stuart really started to become famous for this painting here, which is referred to as the Skater. Um, it is a full length portrait of someone done in 1782. And because of it, he became very famous. Keep in mind, they call him a Revolutionary War painter, but he was extremely young during the Revolutionary War and didn't really start becoming famous until the very end. So the Lansdowne painting was painted for the first Marquis of Lansdowne, who was the he was an ambassador to the United States from England, and it was painted in 1796. Um, the original painting today is in the National Portrait Gallery in Washington, D.C. But as I've mentioned, Stuart did a lot of original copies of the painting, knowing that it would be extremely successful and it would sell. Um, one of these paintings is in the East Room of the White House and has become extremely famous. Um, According to the story, Washington only sat once for this painting. He went to Stuart's studio and sat for the day, and then Stuart finished the rest of it on his own. The painting is 8 feet by 5 feet, so it's huge, and it is full of detail. So let's talk about that for a bit. So Washington is standing with his arm out in an oratorical fashion, as though he is speaking to a group and is trying to persuade them of something. He is carrying on his left side a ceremonial sword, a sword of peace, not a sword for war. In the background, far right top, there is a rainbow drawn to symbolize both the American Revolution and peace. The chair behind him has a little bitty ornamental thing showing the red, white, and blue of the American flag. There are books underneath the table on the left-hand side. These books include the Federalist Papers, the general orders going to General George Washington during the American Revolution, and a copy of the Constitution. And if you notice, the Constitution has a spelling error. It says Constitution of the United States. That's actually been done intentionally to show that it's a copy. And the table leg is carved with these fasces, which is a bundle of wooden rods that Roman senators used to carry around with them. It's a symbol of power in ancient Rome. The silver inkstand on the table has Washington's coat of arms on it. There is a white quill, and the white quill pen and the silver refer to loyalty. So does the tiny little figurine of a dog. The painting was purchased in 1797 for the East Room of the White House and has been there ever since. And it has become quite famous because it is one of the few things that was saved during the time when the British burnt down the White House in 1814. So this is Dolly Madison, the wife of the fourth president of the United States, James Madison. Today, she's more famous for desserts that are named after her. But this painting of her actually was done by Gilbert Stuart in 1804. And during her husband's presidency, she was still quite young. I believe she was in her 30s and early 40s. And she was considered one of the prettiest first ladies that we've ever had. So she was at the White House on the day that the British were coming in, and her husband had already gone out into the countryside to check on the forces and things. And he sent her a note saying, "You have to leave." And she had been preparing for a large dinner. Now, the story goes that as she was preparing to get into her carriage and flee, she noticed this painting of Washington, the one we've been discussing. She says, "This must be saved." And she had it taken down and rushed into her carriage along with some copies of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. And the story goes that she grabbed some silver spoons on her way out. The British come, they eat her delicious meal that she had prepared, and then they burn the house down. And everything that was in the house was burnt, with the exception of those few things that she saved, including the painting. But there's another part of the story. Keep in mind, this painting is 8 feet by 5 feet. So we can question how a woman of Dolly Madison's size, she was quite short, could even get this down from the wall, much less get it into a carriage. The story is that she actually instructed this man, her slave, Paul Jennings, to take the painting down and put it into a wagon and take it to safety. Jennings did write this in his memoirs many years later. Later in his life, he was able to save money and buy his freedom from Dolly Madison and wrote his story. And during the Barack Obama presidency, Barack Obama had the descendants of Paul Jennings come to the White House so that he could discuss with them their ancestors' heroic saving of the painting. A lot of people think that the Lansdowne painting is the origin for the picture of George Washington on the dollar bill. Actually, it is this painting, also a Gilbert Stuart painting. This is called the Athenaeum painting, and it was done a year earlier in 1796. It is an unfinished painting. Why it's unfinished, I do not know, but he started this painting. You can see that he went into great detail into the face and the shoulders and then came to a complete stop. The painting was given to the Athenaeum in Boston, Massachusetts, and that's why it's called the Athenaeum painting. And today it is still in Boston. It is at the Museum of Fine Arts there. And it is the source for the dollar bill and for a huge number of stamps that we have showing George Washington. And here you can see the East Room of the White House, and you can see the painting behind the piano there. Okay, my students, you're giving me between 7 and 10 sentences about the significance of the Lansdowne painting of George Washington. And I hope you enjoyed this.